But other companies are hedging against future cost increases by saying they're going to use the tariff refunds to keep prices lower because guess what? Trump is trying to keep the tariffs. And he's being sued, as Joe pointed out, by 25 states who are basically arguing that these tariffs, these new tariffs, are a pretext for the same old tariffs that are going to raise prices on Americans yet again.
That Trump believes in tariffs. There's no question about that. He thinks they're doing the right thing. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We'll save that for another day. The point is, once he lost the case, it's out of his control. This is what the court mandated, and here we are.
Actually, the mechanism by which they reimburse is completely within their control.
Right.
The court just said the tariffs are illegal. They decide how they reimburse, and they've created a process that makes it possible for large corporations to get reimbursed.
But if you are importers on some of these,
but if you are a regular person,
you didn't import and pay the tax.
You paid
it downstream. Yes, I understand that.
Some people did, and it's
the money had to go back to the
difficult
importers. That was my decision.
to get that money back.
Abby Phillip puts Joe Borelli under pressure on Newsnight as the two clash over Trump's tariffs and the controversial $100 billion in refunds, with Phillip pushing back on the bigger question of who actually benefits from the policy. As the discussion gets more intense, Abby Phillip challenges Borelli's argument and forces the conversation toward the people who could ultimately gain or lose from these decisions. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip takes on Joe Borelli in this heated Newsnight debate.
Corporate America seems to be benefiting from the tariff refund. In new court filings, the White House has actually paid back now $100 billion since the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. Companies like Apple received more than $2 billion. Amazon says that it got $600 million, and Nike recovered $300 million. So how much did the average American receive out of this? Well, almost certainly nothing. But Trump is doubling down on this marquee piece of his agenda.
You're here to talk about the economy.
Right.
What's your big message? You want to leave one takeaway with this crowd. What is it?
So tariffs have been incredible. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars. Supreme Court gave us a little shot, but we're allowed to do it in a different manner.
That is being challenged, by the way, that he can do it in a different manner. But I mean, Trump is not going to learn. And I think the optics of this are pretty bad. You know, these corporations are basically getting a massive windfall. They did absorb a lot of those costs, some of them that were passed down to consumers. And if you bought something from overseas, you're not ever probably seeing that money again.
No, I'm not getting any of the money back on my bundles, and that's okay.
Right. All the shopping that you've been doing, Yemisi, you're not going to get that money back.
And I don't know how businesses, especially small businesses, are supposed to even get that money down to the consumers, because if I'm a business, I'm scared in this economy. I'm keeping the cash that I have for my cash reserves. I've probably overextended on some business loans that I need to pay back. I mean, I think a lot of people are just trying to catch up. There's not an excess to give more to the consumer.
The other thing that stands out is the speed at which this is happening. The Supreme Court decision was February of this year. Within less than 6 months, they gave out $100 billion.
And that's actually not even close to the total.
Yeah.
Because that's really just from the beginning of this year. It's a phased process. So there's a lot more money that's going to go out.
My mother
door.
broke her ankle. It's 3 months with Medicare. We're trying to get reimbursed for a $300 x-ray. You need to fill out 2 forms, have 7 receipts. You have to sign something in blue ink, witnessed by a Hare Krishna during a full moon, and then you have to have her left ankle notarized. Like it's so set up for the corporations and that top 1% against all of the average Americans. And this is another example of that, unfortunately.
J.D. Vance was on Fox News tonight, and he was actually calling out the socialists who are running in races across the country. But here's what he said about socialism. Listen.
This is exactly what El Sayed and these limousine socialists are actually selling to the American people. They're not promising you industry. They're not promising you good jobs. They're not promising self-sufficiency and a good industrial economy. What they're promising is redistribution. Again, we've seen this in Europe and in the United States. The idea that you can build real prosperity by just redistributing assets from one group to another group, that's not how you build real prosperity.
I mean, it seems like it's redistribution for me, but not for thee, because they literally said they were going to use the tariff money to reimburse farmers who were hurt by the tariffs. They also put tariffs on the economy. And guess what? We lost manufacturing jobs in that time.
But again, the loss for the Trump administration was the Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court decided this issue. The case was brought by, roughly the same attorneys general who are now bringing the case against the new Trump tariffs. This is the decision they sought. This is the relief they sought. This is what the actual appellants to this case wanted to happen.
The key issue is not just who ultimately pays tariffs, but who has the best chance of getting that money back. Tariffs are charged when imported goods enter the country, so American businesses that bring those products into the United States are the ones that make the payment at the border. Foreign governments are not simply sending a check to Washington. Businesses can then deal with those added costs by raising prices, accepting smaller profits, or using some combination of both. That is where the situation becomes much harder for everyday consumers. If a family paid more for something several months ago because of higher import costs, there is no easy system that can trace that exact purchase and return the extra money to them. Large companies are in a much stronger position because they keep extensive import records and usually have accountants, lawyers, and other staff who can handle a complicated refund process. That gives major corporations a clear advantage when large amounts of money are being returned. Smaller businesses can face an even tougher situation because many of them already work with limited profit and may have had to absorb higher costs or increase prices just to keep operating. Even if those businesses receive refunds later, that does not necessarily mean the money will make its way back to customers who already paid higher prices. This also raises a much larger question about what tariffs are actually supposed to accomplish. If the purpose is to strengthen American manufacturing, then the real test should be whether companies are building new factories, making long-term investments, creating stable jobs, increasing wages, and improving productivity. Simply collecting a large amount of tariff revenue does not prove that the policy is delivering those results. There's also a clear tension when politicians speak against government redistribution while supporting a system in which powerful corporations may have a realistic path to recover huge amounts of money, while ordinary consumers have little or no practical way to recover the extra costs they already paid. In the end, the important question is not whether tariffs sound strong or produce an impressive revenue figure. The real test is whether they make life better for working Americans and whether the economic benefits reach the people who are supposed to gain from the policy. If those results never appear, focusing on the headline revenue number can distract from the much bigger question of who actually benefits.
And now the same people are saying, well, I can't believe the money's going back to these corporations.
Well, that's because they broke the law.
That was always going to happen. The problem here is that Trump believes in tariffs. There's no question about that. He thinks they're doing the right thing. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We'll save that for another day. The point is, once he lost the case, it's out of his control. This is what the court mandated, and here we are.
Actually, the mechanism by which they reimburse is completely within their control.
Right.
The court just said the tariffs are illegal. They decide how they reimburse, and they've created a process that makes it possible for large corporations to get reimbursed.
You have to give it back to the importers. The importers are some of these
but
major
if you are a
corporations.
regular person,
You didn't import and pay the tax. You paid it downstream. Yes, I understand that.
Some people did, and it's
the money had to go back
difficult
to the importers. That was the decision.
to get that money back.
This is the greatest redistribution of wealth in the history of the United States, and it is coming from regular, everyday Americans who are just trying to pay their bills, pay their grocery bill, buy a car, make sure that their kids have everything they need when they're heading back to school in the fall, and it is going into the hands of people who already have so much.
Especially when the economy's hurt because of the Iran war. If anybody needed it now, but
the average person lost $2,000 last year because of
the government can call all these companies in and go, look, you need to filter some of this down to the people. Figure it out, and we'll figure it out with you. And that's a choice that they're not doing that.
And Donald Trump has the influence to do that.
Some companies, to be fair, are saying, either if you're Amazon, because Amazon sells, they have both business merchants and consumer merchants. So they're going to try to give back some tariffs to certain customers. But other companies are hedging against future cost increases by saying they're going to use the tariff refunds to keep prices lower. Because guess what? Trump is trying to keep the tariffs. And he's being sued, as Joe pointed out, by 25 states who are basically arguing that these new tariffs, are a pretext for the same old tariffs that are going to raise prices on Americans yet again.
Well, there's no two ways about it that tariffs built our country. Like when you look at Mount Rushmore and you see all the presidents there, every single one of them were high tariffs. Like you have to have a way. If you're going to do tax, you can do it a multitude of ways. You tax foreign imports rather than giving income tax to people, and it creates one of two
that
things,
was in a
right?
completely
Like,
different
right, but
economy.
my point
the
is that,
world
like,
economy doesn't work that
right.
way.
And
By
so
the way,
there's,
things were already
hold
so
on.
expensive.
So there's a case to be made that you have to adapt tariffs to the 21st century.
The real issue is that the tariff debate is often presented as a simple choice between supporting or opposing tariffs, when the more important question is who ends up paying the cost and who gets the benefit. Import duties are usually paid first by American businesses bringing goods into the country, and those added expenses can later reach consumers through higher prices. Families can therefore feel the impact of tariffs long before any refund process even starts. The refund system creates another problem because large companies have accounting teams, lawyers, and detailed customs records that can help them handle complicated reimbursement rules. Ordinary families do not have anything similar. There is no basic system that can follow every tariff-related increase at the checkout and automatically return that extra money to the customer. There is also a big difference between tariffs used during earlier periods of American industrial growth and the economy today. The United States once depended much less on imported parts and materials, while modern manufacturers often rely on supplies and components from several countries. Making those inputs more expensive can raise costs for American companies instead of simply forcing foreign producers to pay the price. If the goal is truly to rebuild American industry, tariffs cannot be the only answer. The country also needs better infrastructure, worker training, research, energy investment, and stronger domestic supply chains. Without those efforts, tariffs could become another costly burden without delivering the manufacturing comeback that workers were promised. In the end, economic policy should be judged by whether it lowers costs, supports lasting jobs, and gives ordinary Americans more purchasing power, not just by the amount of money collected by the government or how tough the policy sounds.
And Jamison Greer's not doing a great job. The way he's done it, he's lost every case that he's done. Like, we got to be better about this because here's the deal, guys. You got to be thinking 10, 20 years in the future.
You can't blame Jamison
America
Greer for this.
Has to go, but America, but one way or another, hold on, America has to go back to being a nation that builds and manufactures. And tariffs are one of the main ways you do that.
Okay, why has manufacturing hold on, why has manufacturing declined? I mean, you can't just I get that talking
Democrats
point,
and
and
Republicans
you said it.
sold out
the
our country for
administration
30
says
years.
it all the time, but the facts don't back up a manufacturing renaissance. In fact, manufacturing investment has gone down compared to the Biden years. How do you justify that when you're claiming the tariffs are supposed to bring back manufacturing?
No, I'm saying the vision you have to think of for the next 20 years. Why is
I'm
China?
not talking vision. I'm talking reality.
Right now?
What is the reality
Because they
of how
manufacture.
tariffs have affected the economy? Some industries might benefit in the short term from tariffs, but in the long run, the broader economy is going to suffer. That is what we have seen happen.
Tariffs work
to do what?
The way that
to
the
raise
Trump
prices
administration
for
is currently
Americans?
going about it
In the long run,
not successful.
Tariffs
and we
work
can't
by raising
redistribute-
prices for consumers.
No.
That is how they work.
And
They work by
and
incentivizing
manufacturing
domestic
because we've
production
allowed
when they
lower
work.
prices.
where have they
Labor
incentivized domestic production?
That's why I'm saying Jamison Greer, like he's the guy in the
it's not-
job.
it's not Jamison
I'm
Greer's
telling
fault.
you,
Better policy.
it actually hasn't happened.
But the bottom line is the concept of tariffs, when properly applied and adjusted to the 21st century, work. And nobody's answered
No,
my
they
question,
haven't
which is
worked.
how are you going to return
You can't say
America
something
to
worked when it didn't
manufacturing and
work.
being
Yeah, I mean, you're
building?
claiming that it
Because
worked, but
that's
you're
how
providing
China has
absolutely
become
no
superpower,
evidence.
Is China builds. China makes stuff, guys.
Carolyn,
You gotta
no,
make
where's
stuff.
the evidence
hang
that
on.
tariffs have worked?
Right, there's zero evidence that tariffs work, but at the end of the day, Donald Trump was elected because he promised, what did he say 1,000,000 times on the campaign trail? On day one, everything will get less expensive. Your grocery bills will go down, your car payment will go down, and the first thing he did was to make everything more expensive, and that was before the war in Iran. He's destroyed an economy that was already on shaky ground.
The biggest weakness in the tariff argument is that a promise to rebuild American manufacturing isn't proof that the policy is actually doing it. Tariffs may protect some U.S. industries, but they can also raise the price of imported parts, equipment, and materials that American factories need. That can make expansion more difficult instead of helping companies grow. The other problem is judging success by political announcements rather than measurable results. If tariffs are meant to revive manufacturing, we should see steady growth in factory investment, production, wages, and jobs. If those numbers aren't improving, Americans have a good reason to question the strategy. Timing matters as well. A factory can take years to build, while higher prices can reach families almost immediately. Consumers can't wait a decade for a possible manufacturing boom while paying more for cars, electronics, appliances, and other basic goods. Businesses also face higher input costs, which can lead them to delay investment or raise prices. And tariffs aren't the only way to rebuild industry. The government can support infrastructure, job training, research, energy, and companies that build facilities and hire American workers. These steps directly support production instead of assuming expensive imports will automatically create factories. So the real test isn't whether tariffs sound patriotic or tough. It's whether they improve American manufacturing without hurting household purchasing power. If those results aren't visible, promises about future benefits aren't enough. Americans need real results they can see.